Welcome back into another week of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks, S.J. Munoz with you once again. Talk all things going on in the world of sports and wagering. Have some fun with you here as we get into a new week here, the end of the month of June. And we're winding down kind of to me, it's almost like the end of the official sports calendar, really, because we've got Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals on the TV right now as we record. The CWS Finals also going on tonight over in Omaha. And then, of course, you got that lull. Of course, baseball's going on, but, that goes on forever. So,
when isn't it going on? I mean, I guess the good news is we got Olympics coming up here
That's
this
true.
summer. If you're into that, it's a little bit of a dead end here for a month or so, but we'll dig something up, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll persevere and overcome. All right, as we get rolling here on the program, we of course always like to talk about what we might be trying out as a beverage as well, and get some fun stuff usually here during the summer. And I'm pretty pleased with this one. I tracked down the folks at Big Grow Brewery over in Coralville, make some good stuff. I've talked about before their one called Citrus Surfer. Well, they came out with one this summer called the Citrus Surfer Lime variety, and I know the audio doesn't do it total justice here as you're listening. You can't see my camera here, but it's a nice little blonde haze beer. It's real kind of crisp and clean, smooth finish. I really like this one. I hope they keep it around here for a while. We'll see how much of a seasonal thing it turns out to be, but I'm gonna go find some more of it. I know that. How about you? What are you drinking?
Well, I'm kind of in that vacation mode. Got the first one checked off the list here this summer. I got a few more planned, but didn't quite get to the the beach that I'm hoping to get to here. But I went with the Kona Brewing's Island Lager. I know the Big Wave's pretty popular out there, but I actually do kind of like this one a little better. Both are good, don't get me wrong. But just that easy drinking, kind of puts you kick your feet up and not do shit type of beer. That's kind of what I kind of in that mode. I'm feeling just like kicking back and relaxing and taking in all this heat.
You got the Bruno Mars. Today I'm not doing anything shit going on. I like that. Honestly, I don't know that I've had the Island Lager variety. I have had the Big Wave, I know that, but I'm not sure if I've had that one. So I'm gonna have to do that sometime. I do see those a lot. They do a pretty good job with their distribution, that's for sure. So that's what we're drinking. Hopefully you've got something good to sip on while you're listening to the program here. And I guess if it's not at work, then we probably would discourage that. But go ahead.
It depends where you work. You never know.
That's true. You never know.
Going to some of these office buildings, you didn't think you're in a tap room or a distillery.
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah. I don't know how they get away with that stuff, but it works out, I guess. We're rocking and rolling here, and we're going to dive into, of course, a couple of the big things that are going on here with the events that we just alluded to here tonight. And then we've got a couple other topics we'll dive into. SJ's going to give you a little fight preview on the way here as well towards the end of the program. So stay with us for all that here coming up. First things first, let's start off with some baseball just because it is, kind of in our wheelhouse here in the area as far as location. College World Series final, Texas A&M, Tennessee, deciding Game 3 going on right now as we speak here tonight. And it's been a good game here so far. Of course, obviously been a good series since each team won one here to get to this point. A&M, really, I guess the first one on Saturday kind of surprised me because they jumped out to a huge lead in that first game. And it was like, I think most people had the opinion that Tennessee would be the team to do that just because they've shown the offense power throughout this CWS. But A&M came to play. They won that first game 9-5. Next game on Sunday, Tennessee jumped out to the lead and they held on, won 4-1 in that one. And now we've got a good battle going here. It's A&M threatening here in the top of the sixth, but Tennessee's up 3-1. So it's been some good baseball. As far as the competition, we talked about that in the early rounds. It's really good, and it's been pretty good here in this final as well.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's been a little different though, as far as the runs scored, with the exception of that first game. I mean, still a decent enough offense, but maybe not the explosive numbers that we thought we would see, especially considering the two teams that made it through. But a little bit chalky on one side at least. But I still think all in all is a pretty good series with enough unpredictability combined with kind of best teams maybe making it through to the finals, or at least two of the four, 3 or 4 best teams. So that's kind of what you want there, a good mix of some of the unforeseen happening, as well as you don't want a system where it's Cinderella is always making the finals. You kind of especially with a sport like that, you want the better teams to get there. But yeah, it's been pretty good. And I don't know. We got still plenty of time left here tonight, but it kind of seems like you really wanted to get that second game if you're A&M, because now it's your back's up against it there when you kind of let that lead get away there. I know it was a tight game, but they did have a chance to jump on them early again in game 2 and just weren't able to kind of put that big number up like they did the night or the game before.
Yeah, and yeah, so Tennessee right now with the advantage, and we'll see how that plays out. I did get a chance to sneak over there last week. I just kind of on a whim. It was I think it was Wednesday when they had the couple of games going on to determine if it would be elimination games the day after. And the weather was just perfect because it was kind of overcast, ended up being like 70 degrees. My daughter had a camp thing going on, so my son, I was just picking him up and kind of taking him home, and he was just hanging out for a while. So I'm like, well, he's got nothing to do. Let's see if I can sneak the hell out of here and go watch some baseball. So lucked out, was able to snag some pretty good seats, and got a buddy, fortunately, that does work downtown Omaha, so I got the hook up with the parking situation, which is always a deal to overcome. And yeah, it was good atmosphere, good baseball. I was really impressed with Tennessee. My son was kind of rooting for Florida State. I think, I don't know. Kids, they just pick a team. That's kind of how it goes. But they did make it interesting. It was kind of boring at first, but Florida State hit a couple back-to-back home runs in that game to at least kind of give some spark in life. And then Tennessee ended up hitting one out of the park too. So fun to see some home runs. That's what folks like to go and enjoy. And yeah, good experience. I was the only thing that really sucked about it was they tried to cram in those 3 games that day, so they really had short turnaround between games, and getting into the stadium was absolute hell. But they had nothing making much do about that because they're clearing one group out and getting the next one in. And overall, I think they did a pretty good job of it, but it's just kind of the nature of that situation. But yeah, impressive. I mean, it just. I'm always kind of a little bit amazed on how that whole scene just continues to grow. Like, there's always more vendors, there's always more of this or that, and there's something else to do or see, and it's certainly great for the city of Omaha.
Yeah, even for someone that's goes regularly. I mean, I can't remember the last time I at least missed one weekend up there. It's like, yeah, you're right. It's always something different, at least a tweak here or there, and usually for the most part, it's to the good side. But when I saw that, I mean, it made sense because they ended up getting some pretty bad weather the night before there and in the area. But when I saw that was the plan, I was like, man, that's going to be a little tricky. I mean, logistically, no matter what kind of setup you have, and anybody playing that many games in that short of a time, especially with a sport with no game clock,
Yeah,
makes it a little bit more tricky with that. But it sounds like all in all, it's still pretty good. But there's always things to learn, and maybe next time do a little better. I know. Kind of took away that buffer day that they had before starting a day earlier, so maybe that would come into play. But then you add that day, and then there's no weather and no games, and people are mad about that. So he's kind of it's a little bit of a risk when it comes to weather. It just I mean, it almost seems guaranteed at least one day or one game is going to be affected.
yeah.
But it's still not a given. So I can understand not maybe scheduling an extra day just because of. I mean, when you talk about teams that are in the finals now, how long have they been in town for, and just the cost of being there that long. And I don't know how people. I mean, I understand if your kid's on the team and all that stuff, but just fans in general, just just getting time off work and then let alone spending that money is got to be kind of crazy when you get to this point.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know how some of those families do that. Of course, it's a little bit maybe different nowadays with the whole NIL thing. Maybe the school does do a little bit more to help them out, but yeah, that would have sucked. I mean, yeah, like you said, just the time off alone. I mean, not everybody's a retired banker or whatever the hell.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, and then you got to find the funds, and of course that's another thing that is become a negative of the event. Unfortunately, I think the stadium is great. The atmosphere usually ends up being great, but some of the pricing situation has just gotten out of control. Like game tickets, if you're the average Joe in town, it used to be that was cool for folks in the area that lived in the area because odds are you weren't going to get gigantic fan bases to travel to the event. There'd be good numbers for certain teams, but there'd always be seats. There'd always be seats available, and you could afford to take your family out and go to the games and enjoy at least one night of the College World Series. It's a lot harder to do that now. I mean, just ticket prices for most of the evening games when it's more accessible to everybody. We're usually in the $70 to $80 at least buck per ticket, and then obviously, if you're doing anything else, parking's involved, and you're buying swag, and you're buying drinks and food, and it becomes a pricey affair very, very fast. And it's not different from a lot of things. I understand that, but it just kind of sucks. It has lost its luster in that regard, where it's become almost a little bit more corporate than you would hope.
Yeah, I mean, all the extras is kind of that's kind of up to you. But when it comes to not being able to get into the game for less than $40, and we're talking about cheap nosebleeds, that's
Yeah.
When you got a decent sized stadium, that's a little bit it's a little bit much, especially when you're not talking about a professional sports franchise here. Usually, the NCAA level is a little bit more affordable, no matter what sport it is. So that's a little bit of a deterrent. I know when I was in town there, we were thinking about sneaking into what was it, Carolina and A&M that had that 3 hour delay. I believe that's who it was. And I mean, it didn't start till I think it was 10 o'clock or a little bit after. And had it been earlier in the day, we still might have done it. But just being the fact that it was that late and they still wanted $40-$45 just to get in the doors, it just seemed like we kind of wasn't really good enough bang for the buck there. And weather was still in the area, so there was no guarantee that game was getting finished that night. So I mean, it's kind of, I guess that's just the way to approach it. Maybe it's just kind of got to weigh it in it. Is it really worth it to you? I guess if it is, go for it, have fun, enjoy it, because you will have a good time.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of is the juice worth the squeeze? From your perspective, and for us, it wasn't. But I'm glad everybody that got in is having a good time, and it sounds like those the Jello shots are still flowing like wine. So at least for that, no slowing up there.
Yeah, and of course that's one thing that they probably they could have went ahead and kept as a piece of the puzzle when they moved to the new stadium. That was always the allure of Rosenblatt, was the fact that you had GA options and you could go stand in a line and get into the game, buy a pack of tickets for $20, and you go to whatever games you can get into. Now I realize there's a lot of the logistical things that they don't love about that, and that's why they wanted to get away from it. I think is having people stand around in line and clog up things, and weather gets involved in that too. You got to pay attention to people standing in the heat and all that, but it does take a little bit of the fun away from it. That was one of those options. You almost wish they could have kept at least maybe half of the outfield as a GA section or something, just to give that opportunity to some other folks to maybe be able to get into it.
Well, and even outside of the general, because I was never someone that wanted to stand in line that long, and I mean it was a cool opportunity, but for me myself, it wasn't there was never anybody there that that I wanted to stand in line that long for the years that I'd been there. But there was still always a way to get a ticket. It seemed like through somebody you knew, or even the secondary market was a little bit more affordable then. I remember, kind of the first few years that mobile tickets were a thing, getting tickets for 12, 15, 17, maybe $20 at the most. And I was on the lower level, and this was in when it was TD Ameritrade. This is when it had first opened, so it was the new stadium. Even I recall that. So that's kind of just starting to price certain people out, and maybe it'll go different, I guess, if we get some different teams in there. I know this year is pretty kind of heavy with maybe some traditional power, or at least teams that you thought were going to bring a good chunk of their fan base up here, so maybe that kind of drove the price a little high. But I mean, I think to me it's just across the board with sports attending events. It seems like to me the issue is more of the I guess the ticket brokers, if you want to call them that or whatever, just kind of buying them up, with bots or what have you when they go on sale and reselling them for double the price. So to me, that's more the issue. And if there's no regulation there, I mean, it's just going to keep going on. So I think that's kind of the thing I would more point to is that seems like that's where you're really seeing the high prices is from whatever you want to whatever typical ticket thing you go through, StubHub, SeatGeek, whatever. I mean, I'm not saying anyone's better than the other, but I'm not saying any of them are good either.
Yeah. And that's the other part of it. I mean, I had interactions that day when I was starting to think about it. I happened to see something on a group on Facebook, somebody that was selling, and it looked semi legit. And as soon as I had one line of conversation with the person, I realized that nah, this probably is not legit. They're trying to screw me over. And that's the other thing that sucks about the electronic thing is like you can't, there's no way to know to protect yourself in those
Mm,
situations. Like, and
right.
it sucks for even for honest people that are on their own trying to sell them. Like, it can work out still, but man, you got to trust that other person on the other side of it, to make it work and go smoothly. And then of course, I had the issue when I was just trying to buy them before of you get in, you think you have some, and then you get to the end to check out and it's like, oh nope, you gotta pick different seats. This is gone. Like the system can't even keep up with itself because of the way it functions now. So it's frustrating. Yeah, it really does suck. I don't know if it'll ever get better in that regard, but who knows, maybe they'll figure out some way to make the whole app work smoother on each of the different entities. But yeah, it's unfortunate, and that is a big part of the problem for sure. It's harder to get those ticket prices to come down that way. One other thing too that just was a kind of a little nugget along the way. I saw some folks posting some screenshots over the weekend of the hotel room prices there in downtown Omaha at the Hilton had rocketed up to like $6,000 a night for somebody to stay and just to be there.
I mean, that's
Which
a nice place, but come on, man. Like, what are you doing? You're getting a bed and maybe what, a couple eggs in the morning. I mean, come on. Like,
well, you're talking about a mortgage payment on a multi-million-dollar home if that's what we want to do with that kind of price per night. It's just unbelievable. Yeah, and that brings into
I'm just
question
saying,
too.
depends where you park, but I guess I would go. I'm gonna sleep in my car at that point. Um,
You think about like what the hell are the regulations on this too? They're supposed to be
right.
against price gouging, but that's obviously what's going on here. Like it makes no other sense. The only I had a discussion with my wife about it, and she's like, well, part of it maybe is they just don't want people to stay there at all because of the
Yeah.
hassle and because of maybe they have teams staying there. They'd rather not have people bugging them, messing with them. If that's the case, just don't even list them. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand. But anyways,
Yeah, I did see. I can't remember that outlet, but I did see kind of someone going to that, that price gouging because I know there's obviously legal issues with that, but I don't know if sometimes when I mean there's always loopholes and it could be when there's a major event it kind of is waived those type of but there's still got to be some parameters in place for that. But yeah, that's for anybody to pay that, I can't really fathom that. Even someone that doesn't have to worry about money, it still seems like a little bit just frivolous to throw that much money around just for let's say if you're one of the fans that she's playing in it, how long are you actually going to be in that room?
yeah,
4 or 5 hours
not at all.
maybe,
Yeah.
like because even if you win, you're partying all night. If you lose, you're probably drowning your sorrows for a couple hours at least after, and maybe sleep for a few and then get out of town. So I don't know, it just seems ridiculous. It's almost like it would be humorous if it wasn't like so like so asinine.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I was talking after a buddy had sent that over the first time. I was like, "You legitimately have to be an asshole, right? If you were to pay that kind of money, like that
Yeah,
person is an asshole. Like, just no way you could
right. Like
justify that."
they shouldn't be. I hope they spend that much for the room and then can't get a ticket. Now that would be kind of like that'd be like poetic justice, as Bart Scott would say.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. So yeah, that's the College World Series. Obviously, we'll know by the time this is out and you're hearing it who the winner was. But good game going on there in the final. Another good game that's going on right now is the Stanley Cup Finals. We made it to a Game 7, believe it or not. It was a 3-0 start for Florida in the series, and the Edmonton Oilers did make it happen. You kind of got the feeling when they won that the second game of the 3-game streak that they're not letting this thing not go to Game 7 because they're going back to Edmonton on Game 6 and trying to bring this thing home, and they got it done. It was a little bit more testy in that fifth game, or in that sixth game, excuse me, but they were the better team. It looked like for sure there in that one. But tonight, they're, as you would expect, they're absolutely duking it out. It's 1-1 right now as I speak, and Edmonton's on a power play. And this series we thought had the potential to be really good, just because the teams have some stars out there, and the way that they've been playing throughout the season, you just kind of got that feeling that it would be a great one, and it's turning out to be that. They're writing that story right now as we speak. So as a hockey fan, I guess you're getting what you want right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, the crazy thing to me, I mean, just the it almost seems like, except for the exception of a couple games like that 8-1 game, that it's been more of a lower scoring affair, which is kind of how it goes when it's, oh, there's no way they're not going to just be putting up goal after goal, and then it pretty much plays out the opposite way. That's kind of the way things go usually. So maybe we should have saw that coming. I know there's been some pretty good performances. I actually ended up just, I said screw the totals after a couple failures and try to pick goal scorers, and that actually ended up playing out better for me on that occasion. So it's got to adjust as it goes, but it has been a good series, and like you said, just kind of see it coming. Not that anybody let up or anything. It was just once they get that momentum going in hockey, it's crazy how hard it is to flip it, and
Mhm.
it seems like it was almost impossible, to even win a game, and then here they go and win three in a row. But that's just that's the way it goes in the playoffs, at
Yeah,
least.
yeah, it's odd. I mean, and of course, a lot of people will say it's really hard to have that momentum carry over from game to game just because of the way the game is, and I agree with that to an extent. But there are certain situations, like I said in that last scenario, where they're going back to Edmonton. You just had that feeling that this team's good enough; they're going to win and get this thing to 7. You knew Florida would come back with some different type of energy here tonight, and they certainly have shown that here in the game so far. So, but yeah, it's been fun. And yeah, like you said, maybe that's been the best part of it as far as from the gambling perspective is just trying to pick some random odds and ends and seeing if you catch something. I know I went a little wild here tonight, and I've got a piece of the puzzle here so far, so I'm itching for this. But I did go with Mr. Verhage to score a goal, who already has here for Florida, and then I have Connor McDavid dropping one in. He's yet to do that, so I'm waiting on his end of the bargain. And then I picked Edmonton to win on the money line, so there was a little boost for going over a certain odd point. So I figured, what the hell? I'll throw the three of them together and we'll see what happens. So we're one piece of the three, so we'll see. It's going to be a good finish here for that one tonight. All right, when it comes to the Stanley Cup Finals, I did want to bring up one little thing I thought was interesting with the broadcast crew there at intermission. They got three guys sitting there, and what they've done is just gone to each arena, found a little corner of the place that they could, have some room, stuck a desk there, kind of have the crowd a little bit as a backdrop, and they do their thing. Now, I saw some people kind of making fun of it online, kind of comparing it to other sports and the more elaborate setups that they have and saying, what the hell, these guys get shorted on the budget or whatever. But I guess from my perspective, I liked it the other way around. I thought it was simple and cool, and they're just doing their thing, doing their job, rather than some, frivolous BS that we don't need to see with little scrolling graphics and whatever. But I guess when it comes to sports, everybody has opinions. Those are two opinions on that front.
Yeah, I think it was. Didn't one night though, like the table was a little bit short, right? Is that kind of where it started from? Like,
Oh, that
I
could
think
be,
like
yeah,
one
yeah.
person was kind of hanging out, and I don't think it was bad. So it was kind of funny. Like, who cares? Like, and I think they said they literally went to like a local furniture store, and that's like the biggest table they had.
Nice.
But I do think it was. I'm with you. Like how it's like they're kind of just there and like in the atmosphere and in the moment. Like, sometimes there's too many bells and whistles. Like just especially if you're kind of just I've talked about it before, especially with like college football. Is kind of kind of where our main interest lies. Just that halftime is obnoxious. It's way too long. Like let's just let's 10-15 minute breaks, talk about what happened, and then get back to the game. So I'm cool with it too. I don't think it's that big a deal. I thought it was kind of funny, and I don't know, maybe just shows that maybe some of these are a little bit some people running these shows and on these big networks, billion-dollar networks, can maybe a little bit more authentic than maybe some of the other networks, just being like, we don't need to do all this, all these bells and whistles, like you said, just kind of have a little, have a little strategy, a little breakdown, and then get back to the game. But to me, it was more that was funny because it kind of felt bad for the person on the end that they were like kind of out there while everybody else is, kind of hiding behind the table, because that's always interesting. That's one thing I thought was funny about like the other shows, where you can kind of tell where someone's chair is like really high, really low, because they want to seem tall. And then like when you're saying in the NBA, I know their halftime gets a lot of love, but Shaq's always like slouching, a guy's big ass foot just hanging out in the middle. Like I'm like, bro, like at least have some friggin' posture. You're gonna wear these nice suits and be on this. I don't even know how expensive that set is, and he just freaking just look like a damn slob. Just I don't. Yeah. So either way, I mean, I think I find humor in both sides, but it's different. So I think at least the idea behind it was kind of a new thing, and I do think is a good concept.
Yeah, and I don't know if they really legitimately like had multiple discuss. I'm sure they did. I mean, they know all that stuff when they're talking about optics and whatever. That's what they do for a living. But I did notice that too. And they had the gal that came on and joined the other three the other night. It's like, oh, they don't have room for her. Like that's not gonna work.
That might have been the best viewpoint there.
Yeah, yeah, not great, but yeah, I guess overall, yeah, I like the idea. I like the concept, just kind of keeping it simple and being in the atmosphere. Sometimes I think that's the tendency for some of those studio shows too, is you're
Yeah.
just not as connected to it, and then of course, as we know, we've talked about with the NBA thing, is like then you get into the jokes and the whatever else rather than the content. So I think it's a little tougher to do when you're there in the atmosphere. So who knows? We'll see if that trend goes one way or another for different sports. But I just thought that was kind of cool when I noticed it the other night. That was a couple of the major topics that we wanted to talk about as far as the action that's going on here tonight. We'll of course keep watching these games, and we'll see who the Stanley Cup champion is by the end of the evening. Whether Edmonton's able to make the big historic comeback and complete it all down, or if Florida is able to win it there at home on their home ice. It'll be a big celebration for whatever fan base that may be, but you sure know those folks in Edmonton will get up those grease poles tonight if they they pull off the win. There'll be lots of Canadian moonshine pulling down those gullets.
Yeah, it'd be. I mean, if you call it that in Canada, I don't know if you call it that, but a lot of people playing hooky tomorrow. I don't know what they cut up there, but yeah, not a lot of work getting done. But rightfully so if you make a comeback like that, I suppose.
Yeah, no doubt. Um, all right, so we've got some things to look forward to as far as some other type of action on the way, and I know you have been looking forward to some upcoming fight cards that are on the way, and want to give you folks a little bit of a insight preview into what's going on there. So, what do you got coming at you?
Yeah, kind of early in the week though, so like I always say, just we won't be making any picks at least until probably Thursday, maybe even later, because the weights are always an issue when it comes. We saw just last week, and there's a significant weight miss on a couple of the fights, and just so we don't want to avoid those bets or it happen chance not get your money back in some situations. So we're not gonna play anything yet, but just as far as the preview goes, we do have a UFC 303. Of course, in T-Mobile in Vegas was supposed to be the return of some certain someone that I don't care for, a little Irishman. But fortunately
A
for
wee lad.
the real fight fans, he was, I mean, had to pull out of the fight for alleged injury, whatever the case may be. But there was pretty good replacements that didn't put on the card. And I think a lot of people were sharing this, like as far as just like the competitiveness and just like the depth of the fights probably actually maybe got a little bit better. Not just because he was off, but also a couple other people ended up having to weren't able to fight. So there's a little bit of maneuvering, which happens often. And that's kind of another reason why on these, I mean, you want to keep an eye on the lines. If there's something that you're looking at and you see the number you want, go ahead and throw down on it. But you always got to be a little cautious when it comes to the fight game, whether it be MMA or boxing, which is another. I'll touch on a boxing fight here too. It's just you just don't. There's a lot more variables. It seems like when it comes to like comparing it to football, basketball, baseball, whatever. So obviously, if you're betting fights, you know that. But just a reminder, it's sometimes it doesn't go off as planned. Just keep it at that. But three of the fights that I am really looking at is Ian Gary and Michael Venom Page at 170 pounds. These are kind of two or newer-ish comer fighters. Kind of one of the whoever wins this is probably going to be real close to a title shot, if not in their next fight. So Ian Gary, also an Irishman. And Venom Page is from England. I'm not sure what he's claiming these days. Who knows? But he was big in another organization. Was been in UFC. But his third fight, I believe, in UFC. So he's kind of just making a name for himself there. So that's a pretty interesting fight there, as far as like an up and coming contender and someone that can get a title shot. In the featherweights, Brian Ortega and Diego Lopez is one of the fights that wasn't on this card 2 weeks ago, and now it's going to happen. So that's kind of one of those. Who knows what to expect? Neither guy was expecting a fight this weekend, but they're going to go ahead and do it. I do like. I mean, I don't know if you consider an upset. I guess the newer fighter, maybe less proven fighter, is Lopez, and he's won his last three fight by finishes. I do expect him to. That's kind of where my lean is. So anybody interested in that or kind of along with me, I'd watch those finish odds. You either pick him by submission, KO or TKO, or just to win by finish. I know a lot of books will offer that number as well. So that's something I lean towards. And finally, the main event, which replaced the McGregor and Chandler fight, is Alex Pereira against Yuri Prohaska. This is actually a rematch. Pereira knocked him out in the first time they met, and that's Prohaska's only lost in his last 5 fights. So obviously a revenge factor, and for Pereira, I mean he's freaking knocking everyone's damn head off. Like 4 first round KOs like in his last few fights. And it's in his 5th fight since April of 2023. So it's
Wow.
not like this dude's kind of picking and choosing his spots. Unlike the guy we talked about that
Mm-hmm.
can't fight to save his life these days. This dude just like, I mean, a lot of them have been short notice. Like, hey, can you fight? Well, sure, let's go.
Yeah.
So, and even at weight class like 205, where it's like you're dealing with some dudes that if you have a bad night or make a mistake, like that's like life changing type of stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
so it'll be interesting to see that if he can hold onto the belt there. And so that's kind of the UFC preview, I guess if you call it that. I'll probably have a few more fights that I'll look at as it gets closer. But those are the ones right now, at least, that even if you're just watching and you don't want to make a play, definitely make sure you check out those fights. And boxing, I got one more for you here. Top Rank's gonna have a card in Miami. This is more of the competitive nature isn't quite there the last 3 fights that I mentioned, but Teofimo Lopez is kind of one of those big name up and I wouldn't even up and coming. He's there. He's won some belts. He beat Lomachenko in like one of his big fights, a couple years back, and he had a couple off nights, but it seems like he's kind of back to where he was there. One of the best fighters in his weight class. So, having said that, he's a minus 1100 favorite. So where I'm going here is we got to look at some props. You're gonna have to look at some under 10.5 rounds is the over under, which I think that's actually a pretty good round number there, considering he's a 1100 a minus 1100 favorite. Under 10.5 rounds doesn't seem that impossible, and you're getting about minus 115 at least on the book. I still some decent money there to play with. If you want to pick him, Lopez, that is by KO or TKO, I found a minus 145, so still not like that high of minus money when you're considering that he's a minus 1100 favorite just to win.
Yeah.
So you're still decent there. But what I would like here and what I probably lean towards here, I'm going to watch it as the week goes on. But just to kind of pick that around the rounds prop, I guess basically is if you want him to win in rounds 1 through 6, you're looking at plus 380. 7 through 12 is plus 150. So if you're gonna pick, him to win in that under 10.5, you might as well go with one of those last 2 props I gave you, because then you're getting plus money for a minus 1100 favorite. If you can get plus money for that big of a favorite, I say your odds are pretty good there for him to come out on top there. So that would be my kind of look there. Like I said, I'll as the week goes on, we'll kind of narrow it down. But that's preview wise, that's what I like here this weekend on the fights.
All right, yeah, interesting kind of look at it there in perspective too, and what you're talking about, kind of watching certain parts of, what lines might be out there to get you a little bit better deal if you are looking at a winner. Maybe that prop at a certain point that's going to be about the same kind of bet is going to get you better money. So that's good advice there. And like you said, the fight game can be so fickle with things happening last minute. With whether a guy can't make it or something happens, some weird thing happens in training a couple days beforehand. You never know. Like
Yeah.
it's always
Well,
something.
well, and even with him being that big of a favorite in the boxing, Lopez, I mean, if he's minus 1100, the guy got $10. You feel like just messing around, pick the dog. You might win money. If not, I mean, with that amount of money, you're probably not gonna get that huge of a return. Take a chance on it. I wouldn't do it, but I'm just saying, like, this kind of, there's something might be there too, because we've seen crazier things happen. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. You never know. You never know what could come around the bend. So. Sometimes the 50-1 long shot in the horse race wins. So you just never know. That's what makes it fun and interesting, I guess. So that's kind of a preview there. I will say too, we didn't really touch on it all that much, but since we had last been on the program, we've done pretty damn good for ourselves on some different little bet props here and there. We were doing, Celtics were winning as we were talking that last night, and Mr. Holiday came through with a nice double-double for me that night that we had on the sheet. And then you did great I think it was the next night with those 2 goal scorers with Kachuk and McDavid there on that same hockey night. So yeah, things were rolling pretty good there. So we're picking a few, hitting a few here and there. That's always nice to get on a little streak and roll, and hopefully that'll carry into some of these picks here for the weekend.
It might not always look like it, but we're trying to win. I mean, you bet to win the money, to paraphrase a former coach in the NFL.
You play to win the games, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's we got some good things rolling. Yeah, we may not always be on the
No
heater.
gambling scandals this week, so
Yeah.
we're doing pretty good. So next week we're probably gonna hit a couple, I bet.
Yeah, they're waiting. Yeah, the news cycle's got to circulate a little bit. They got to break it up a little. Get a few more out there. All right, yeah, keep an eye on those socials and for those bets. SJ will put those out there for you later in the week too for the fight cards. So at SGM Bets, at Cherokee CP are the Twitter handles, so you can follow us along there. Feel free to reach out to us in whatever regard. You know, if you have a topic you want to talk about, you have a bet that you did well on that you want to let us know about, do that too, or give us beverage recommendations, whatever it may be. We'd love to interact with you there. And then, of course, you can find the podcast in any of the major podcast platform locations. So whether that be Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, it's all those places. So be able to track it down and listen to the show. And we do usually put a poll up with the show as well if you interact there. So occasionally we'll throw out some other random videos for you as well. We're making picks and big things. So make sure you're followed to that YouTube channel as well. It's same name every day we're covering. So track it down. That's what we got here this week. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another round of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.